Good to have you back. Today gets dark. These ones really stuck with me. Subscribe for more and let's get started. I, 26-year-old female, found unmarked pills dissolving in my nightstand water, and my boyfriend, 31-year-old male, won't explain where they came from. This one was posted to r/relationship advice about 3 days ago, and I need you to sit with this one because it builds slow and then it hits you all at once. OP opens up, sounding like someone who has been running on empty for a very long time. But pay attention to the details here. I, 26-year-old female, have been with my boyfriend, 31-year-old male, for 2 years now. He's a pharmacy tech, has been the entire time we've been together. I need to get this out because I don't know who else to talk to. For the past several months, I've been dealing with this unexplained grogginess that I just could not shake. I'm talking memory gaps, brain fog so thick I'd lose entire conversations. I blamed it on stress, burnout, not sleeping well, the usual. But then the sleeping got worse. Or I guess it got better in the worst way possible. I started sleeping 12 to 14 hours a night and still waking up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. Even on nights where I went to bed early and got a full 8 hours, I'd wake up and feel drugged. My friends noticed. My boss noticed. I was a shell of myself and I couldn't figure out why. Then, 3 nights ago, I woke up at around 2 a.m. and I saw him. He was standing over my nightstand with a small amber prescription bottle, pouring something into my water glass. He swirled it around with one finger. I mumbled his name and he just smiled and said, "Just getting your water, babe." I was too groggy to push it. I closed my eyes, but I didn't fall back asleep. I watched him through barely open eyes as he set the glass back down and climbed into bed like nothing happened. I lay there with my heart pounding so hard I thought he'd hear it. And for the first time in months, my head was clear enough to be terrified. That last line is what got me. The fog she had been living in for months, the exhaustion she kept blaming on burnout, it might not have been stress at all, and she is lying right next to the answer. So the next morning comes, and OP has to do something a lot of people could never pull off. She has to sit across from this man and act like absolutely nothing happened. She pours herself coffee, eats breakfast, watches his face the entire time, looking for any crack in the mask, any sign he knows she saw what he did. That morning I smiled at him over coffee like my whole world hadn't just cracked open. I watched his face for anything. A glance toward my nightstand, some flicker of guilt, nothing. He kissed my forehead on his way to work like it was any other Tuesday. That scared me worse than what I saw the night before. I started going back through the last few months, the nights I lost completely. Not just bad sleep, gone. Entire evenings erased. I would wake up with splitting headaches and this heavy feeling like I had been sedated. And there was this weird compliance I could not explain. I would just agree to whatever he suggested. Moving money around, canceling plans with friends, giving up things that mattered to me. I just went along with everything like I had no will of my own. I thought I was burned out. So that night, I checked my water glass before bed. Faint, chalky residue at the bottom. 2 nights later, same thing. I started pouring the water out after he fell asleep and refilling it from the bathroom tap. Within 4 days, the fog lifted so fast it scared me. I could hold a thought. I could feel my own opinions again. The contrast was so obvious it made me sick because it meant this had been happening for months. I called my best friend Sarah and told her everything. 4 days without the water and she feels like a completely different person. That is not stress lifting. That is a substance leaving her body. And now she can count every single month she lost to it. Sarah does not hesitate. No, are you sure? No, maybe you are overreacting. Just, you need to start collecting proof right now. And OP knows she is right. This story is just getting started. So at this point, OP is off the water, her head is clearing, and she is not wasting a second of that clarity. She goes full evidence mode. I started being careful about how I handled the glass. Every morning he'd be in the shower by the time I got up, so I had a small window. I used a cotton swab to collect the residue at the bottom and sealed it in a Ziploc. Did this 3 separate mornings. I reached out to my friend Kaylee, who works at a different location in the same pharmacy chain, and asked if she could quietly check his access logs, what he'd been looking up, what stock he'd been near. She said she'd try without raising flags. I also started keeping a journal. Every night I wrote down whether I drank the water or poured it out and how I felt the next morning. Within a week, the pattern was undeniable. Drugged nights, total blackout, headache, 12 plus hours of sleep. Clean nights, I'd wake after 7 hours feeling like a completely different person. Then I noticed something else. I was getting out of the shower and saw faint bruising on my inner thighs, not from anything I remembered. I went through older photos on my phone and found more, marks I'd blamed on bumping into things, but they were always after the nights I had no memory of. I sat on the bathroom floor and just stopped functioning. I couldn't breathe. The thing I didn't want to think was the only thing that made sense. What she is implying there, yeah, that is where this story crosses a line it does not come back from. The comments were not gentle about it either. I worked in pharmacy for 6 years. Quetiapine at even 25 milligrams will knock most people into a dead sleep. He knew exactly what he was doing. This is calculated. That's what terrifies me. He used to joke about how I was such a heavy sleeper and how cute it was that I'd mumble nonsense at night. He was making fun of me for something he was doing to me. I keep replaying every morning I woke up exhausted and he'd already made coffee and was smiling at me like nothing happened. I feel like I've been living with a stranger. This is not a red flag, this is a crime scene. Please tell me you've already left that apartment. You are not safe sleeping next to this person for one more night. I had a partner who did something similar with Benadryl. I lost an entire summer. You don't realize how much time they've stolen until you're out and your memory starts working again. I'm so sorry, OP. A few days later, OP came back with an update post. I got the lab results back and I can't stop shaking. The results came back positive for quetiapine. It's an antipsychotic. At low doses, it basically knocks you out. Sedation, confusion, memory loss. Everything I've been feeling for months has a name now, and it came from a pill my boyfriend was putting in my water. My friend from the pharmacy chain got back to me too. She said he's been internally flagged for accessing medication logs he has no business looking at. Dosage information, stock counts, things completely outside his role. He was researching how to do this. But that's not even the worst part. I was on his laptop looking for something and I found a folder. It was labeled with my first name. Inside were audio recordings of me, time-stamped, dozens of them. In every single one, I'm slurring, barely coherent. He's asking me questions, my passwords, details about my will, whether I'd do anything he wanted, and I'm just answering, like I'm not even there. Some of these recordings go back months. He's been doing this the entire time. I can hear myself in those files, and I don't recognize my own voice. I feel like I'm going to be sick. The comments on this one were a different kind of quiet. Pharmacy tech with access to sedatives and a girlfriend who keeps waking up with no memory. I'm literally sick reading this. Please contact Rain immediately. Please, please, please do not confront him. Men who do this are planners. If he knows you know, he will either escalate or destroy evidence. Get out first, collect proof second, talk never. This 100 times. Pharmacological abusers are a specific profile, methodical, patient, and they rehearse explanations. If she tips him off, he'll have a script ready about how the pills are for her anxiety, and she asked him to help her sleep. Get the evidence chain locked down before he even knows she's awake. This was not impulsive. This was a system. This is where everything finally caught up to him. I filed the police report on a Tuesday. Walked in with a folder that had the lab results, the pharmacy access logs my friend pulled, and a USB drive with every single one of those audio recordings. The detective didn't say much at first. He just kept flipping through pages. Then he looked up and told me the estimated doses I'd been given over that period could have caused lasting neurological damage. He said it carefully, but there is no careful way to hear something like that. I'm currently undergoing a full cognitive and neurological evaluation. Memory testing, processing speed, all of it. The restraining order was granted the same week. He was arrested 2 days later and released on bail, which I expected, but it still made me sick to my stomach. I need to say this clearly. This man watched me wake up every single morning confused and struggling, and he handed me coffee and asked me how I slept. He did that for months. I don't know how much longer it would have gone on if I hadn't woken up that one night. I'm writing this from a different state now. I moved last week. I'm deleting this account after this final edit goes up. To every single person who reached out and helped me see what was really happening to me, thank you. I am still here because of you. Think about that for a second. Your own bed, your own water glass, your own sleep. The person you trusted most in this world built a fog around you and then watched you stumble through it every single morning. And her clarity, it only came back when she stopped drinking the water. That is the detail that stays with me. Those recordings prove this was not impulsive. It was not a bad night or a lapse in judgment. This was calculated and repeated, night after night after night. One comment in the thread really captured where people's heads were at. The voice recordings are what broke me. He wasn't just assaulting her. He was extracting information while she was chemically incapacitated. This man was running an operation on her. All right, that one sits heavy, but we are moving on. The next story hit just as hard, so stay with me. I used to work as a corrections officer at a rural facility near the Blackwater River. There's a reason they stopped letting inmates do outdoor detail. This one was posted to r/nosleep about 11 days ago by a user called CO Burnout 2019. And it is one of those posts that reads like a workplace complaint for the first couple paragraphs, and then the floor just completely drops out from under you. OP wastes no time setting the scene, and you can almost feel the humidity coming through the screen. I worked at a corrections facility about 40 minutes south of nowhere, right along the Blackwater River. No cell signal, no gas station for miles, just swamp, dead cypress trees, and a compound that looked like it had been dropped there by accident. We ran outdoor work details 3 times a week, inmates clearing brush along the riverbank under armed supervision. Monotonous, hot, the kind of duty where nothing ever happens. Then one afternoon, something happened. An inmate named Dwayne Markham was on brush detail. I watched him walk toward a gap between 2 dead cypress trees near the water's edge. He stepped through, disappeared behind the trunks for a second, then came back out the other side. Except he didn't respond when I called his name. Just stood there like he had never seen any of it before. Medical cleared him, brain scan normal, vitals perfect. But then someone pulled his intake photo and held it next to his face. Something was off. Not dramatically, but the jawline was slightly wrong. The spacing between his eyes had shifted. They ran his prints through APHIS. 0 hits. According to every system on record, the man sitting in that cell had never existed. And that is where the post stops feeling like a workplace story and turns into something else entirely. Because OP did not walk away from this. He started pulling on the thread, and what he found behind it is going to stay with you. Within 48 hours, Markham was gone. Not released, not transferred through any system OP had access to. Administration moved fast and moved quiet. Sealed psychiatric transfer. No incident report filed through normal channels. Just erased from the roster like a clerical error. And OP was not about to let that slide. I asked my supervisor about the transfer, sat across from him in his office, notepad out, trying to keep it professional. He didn't let me finish the first question. Told me Markham had been moved to a state psychiatric facility under a sealed order, and that was the end of it. No incident report. Then he leaned forward and said, I remember the exact words, "Drop it. There is nothing for you here." Not angry, just flat, like he was reading off a warning label. I couldn't drop it. I started watching those 2 dead cypress trees from the yard every shift, the gap between them. Something about it pulled at me in a way I can't put into words. I talked to a few of the long-timers on the block, quietly. They all knew about it, called it the threshold, said it had always been there, longer than the facility. People go through and come back wrong. One old lifer named Deckard sat me down and told me straight. The thing that came back wearing Markham's face is not Markham. Markham is still on the other side, or he's nowhere at all. After that, I stopped sleeping right. I started driving past the facility at night and just pulling over. Engine running, staring at the tree line from the road. I wasn't looking for anything specific. I think I was waiting for something to look back. That last line is what got under my skin. Not because it's dramatic, because it's honest. OP isn't chasing a monster. He's parked on the shoulder of a dark road staring at trees because his understanding of what a person is just cracked wide open. The dread here isn't something with teeth. It's the idea that identity itself can be peeled away and replaced, and the world just adjusts around the gap like nothing happened. OP doesn't let it go, and what he finds next changes the whole picture. I started going through the old wing on my off shifts. Supply closet past the decommissioned intake area, the door wasn't even locked. Inside was decades of neglect. Mold, rusted cabinets, boxes of outdated gear. But underneath it all, I found personal effects. Wallets, photos, wedding rings, each tagged with an inmate number. I ran every number through our system. 0 hits. Not sealed records, nothing. These people didn't exist. I started keeping a list. 3 staff members, veteran COs, remembered by name, but with no employment records. 2 inmates whose case files stopped mid-sentence like someone was typing and ceased to be. A disciplinary report references a Captain Ingle who ran the yard for 11 years. HR has never heard of him. The paranoia crept in. I started checking my reflection every time I passed a mirror. Not glancing, staring, making sure it moved when I moved. I told Torres, the only CO I trusted. She went white. Then she told me her grandmother worked at the facility in the 70s. 9 years and never talked about it. When Torres asked as a kid, her grandmother grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise and said, "Don't you ever go near that place." Torres took the job thinking it was an old woman being dramatic. She doesn't think that anymore. I'm going back into the old wing tomorrow. The comments on this one were not messing around. The fingerprint thing is what got me. Everything else you could maybe rationalize, but if APHIS has no record of someone who was convicted and processed through the system, that's not a medical issue. That's an existence issue. Replacement believes he has always been Warden Hollis. Do not correct him. That line is going to live in my head rent-free for a very long time. The part about your reflection being a half-second late is the most unsettling ending I've read on here. Have you considered that you might have already gone through it without remembering? I've thought about it every single day since I quit. I pulled out my old academy graduation photo last week and stared at it for 20 minutes. It looks like me, but there's this feeling I can't shake, like I'm looking at a photograph of someone I used to know really well but haven't seen in years. I don't know how else to describe it. My wife says I look the same, but she pauses for just a second before she says it. OP went quiet for a few days after that last post. Then he came back with an update, and this is where the whole thing shifts. I went back to the river, and now there's a name on the roster I've never seen. I found the logbook. It was buried under filing boxes in the back of the supply closet. Leather-bound, no label, pages yellow and cracked. Looked like it hadn't been touched since the Carter administration. 17 entries. Every single one redacted with thick black marker. Whole paragraphs blacked out. But the same phrase survived on each page, like whoever did the redacting wanted it left visible. Subject returned, but is no longer subject. 17 times. The final entry is dated November 1978, and it's the only one left unredacted. It reads, Warden Hollis entered the threshold voluntarily. Replacement arrived at facility the following morning. Replacement believes he has always been Warden Hollis. Do not correct him. I read that 3 times and put the book down because my hands were shaking. The current warden, the man who hired me, the man who told me to stop asking questions about Markham, his name is Hollis. I don't know if he's a son, a grandson, or if whatever walked out of that gap between the cypress trees in 1978 is still sitting in that office signing transfer orders. I don't know which answer is worse. The comment section had a lot to say about this one. 17 incidents since the 70s, and they just kept sending work details out there? At what point does that stop being negligence and start being intentional? That's exactly where my mind went. You don't log 17 incidents, redact all the details, and then keep the program running unless you want it to keep happening. Inmates nobody will miss going through a doorway that erases them from every system? That's not an accident. That's a pipeline. Okay, the warden detail made my stomach drop. You're telling me someone walked through that thing in 1978, and whatever came back has been running the facility for decades, and nobody questioned it? And OP still hadn't decided what to do about any of it. OP came back one last time with an update post. I went back to the river, and now there's a name on the roster I've never seen. I drove out there last night. I don't know why. Maybe I needed to see it one more time before I could let it go. The facility was dark. No cars in the lot, no lights in the admin building. I walked the trail along the bank until I found them. The two cypress trees, standing like a door frame in the moonlight. And there in the mud, right between them, fresh footprints. Boot prints, heavy ones, leading straight through the gap. I circled around looking for tracks coming back. There were none. Whoever walked through did not return. I checked the staff roster the next morning. There was a name I had never seen, listed as having worked at the facility for 6 years. 6 years. I asked Torres about him. She looked at me like I was crazy and said he had been there longer than either of us. I put in my resignation that afternoon. I am 3 states away now. New job, new apartment, new everything. But here's the thing I cannot shake. Sometimes I catch my reflection a half-second late, like it has to remember what I look like before it moves. The comments hit hard on this one. You need to check your own fingerprints. Now, what if you already walked through and you just don't remember? I grew up about 40 minutes from a facility that sounds exactly like this. There were always rumors about the river bend. Kids used to dare each other to walk between the dead trees. Nobody ever did, as far as I know. And that is the thing that stays with you. Institutions don't fight the unknown. They absorb it. Someone walks through and doesn't come back. A new name shows up on a roster, and everyone just adjusts. The world fills the gap like nothing happened. And OP watching his reflection lag behind him by half a second. Maybe that is just paranoia. Or maybe it is a delay. Maybe something is still learning how to be him. That is the last story for today.